Hello and welcome to Fresh Faced One Shots. My name is Joey,
And I'm Jacob.
and if you've been watching our podcast for a while, Fresh Faced Comics, you'll know that I've been trying to get us to eventually to a point where we're reading like current comic books that are coming out. And I found, we've mostly been reading DC content. And Dawn of DC is happening right now. And I thought it was a perfect opportunity to get Jacob here, who is, for the most part, a newbie to comics, although we have done, well, by the time this comes out, nearly 40 episodes of the podcast.
Nearly 40 episodes.
That said, though, this will have very little to do with our actual podcast, so you don't need to worry about listening to that. But if you do want to listen to that, by all means, I will not complain. But yeah, so Jacob, you're a big Superman fan, and
I am.
we're here to talk about Superman by Joshua Williamson, who's kind of a superstar in the DC world right now. He's kind of crushing it. It's pretty awesome. So he's writing Superman now, and as of recording this, the third issue just came out yesterday.
Yes.
So we're gonna record these all in succession. They're gonna come out pretty close to each other, and as far as future episodes, we'll get the episodes out as soon as we can, as soon as we can read the issues and just record and get those out, so that we can be as up to date as possible. We're gonna do this with a couple other series coming up in Dawn of DC. I will not spoil which ones as of yet, but yeah,
I'm very excited because we've got fun stuff on the slate.
Indeed, yeah. So I'm very excited about this. Let's get into this. This is Superman #1. So first off, the big thing I really want to talk about here is Jamal Campbell's art, because
My God, Jamal Campbell.
he's so good, just so insanely good.
And he does all the art.
It's covers, it's interior art, and it's inks. Does he do colors too? I believe he does colors.
Colors.
Yeah, it's quite the feat, and it all looks so unbelievably amazing. It's really great. From the cover alone, which is a really nice double page here, it's really beautiful stuff. Doing the classic like Superman run thing though, of just opening on a very quick retelling of the Superman origin, almost like All-Star Superman style, with showing him leaving the planet, finding Ma and Pa Kent, growing up, becoming Superman, and just that really quick splash page towards the beginning. Following a flashback with Ma and Pa Kent. It's just really nice to see. I really love it. And then we get right into it. It's very quick in like throwing you into the action as a run. Superman is fighting Livewire, who is a character that you're familiar with, actually.
Yeah, because she's in the animated. She was originated in the animated series.
Yeah.
What I found just really interesting. So like, I did know going in that this was sort of a return to a status quo for Superman on Earth, because he had been like, Clark had been off at Warworld, and John had been Superman. And I think, this first issue, it's a really good, like, if you've never read a Superman comic, go read the Superman comic. Like,
yeah, you really need to know very little going into it. Despite the fact that like DC was really like throwing out there that like Action Comics 1050 is where you start with this current Superman run, you could start with this, and it's a perfect start.
I mean, isn't Action Comics 1050 where they sort of have split off all the Superman stories that they're doing currently with?
1051 is where they split everything up. 1050 is where you establish where like Superman and Lex are at currently, but you don't need it because they throw you right into it here. You know that Lex is in prison. You know that for some reason throughout this issue, Lex is trying to contact Superman, and he's trying to get a hold of him, try to get close to him, it seems. And it's a really interesting dynamic between the two of them, because Lex is talking to him entirely from prison where he's being kept right now. Makes for a really fun dynamic here.
I love this image of Lex Luthor almost muttering to himself his evil plans.
Oh yeah.
Like, Williamson isn't making any sort of idea like, no, Lex is probably has some sort of evil plan. I think it may be a bit more complex than perhaps what we think. But it's fascinating, and like, for a first issue, the plot's really, really quick, even though it turns out to be pretty much all build up to a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Like,
that's how a couple of these early issues work. I think like because we're recording this when like issue 3 is already out. Issue 3 is where we like really start to like actually start going somewhere and get some resolution. But it still makes these first couple issues a really fun ride nonetheless. It doesn't suffer by like not being a complete story in and of itself.
I also like the update of Livewire for the 21st century,
With
which
the
is
podcast, yeah.
a weird thing to say, but like
It's very fun.
we
I love
don't
it.
have like shock disc jockeys anymore.
Mhm.
Well, at least not in like the popular consciousness. We technically do.
Yeah.
And
Um,
she's so fun in this issue. We have a new chief of police for the Metropolis Police Department. We have honestly some amazing art of just Clark and Lois being in love at points.
mhm.
You
And
have
one of my favorite things when we start getting into like Superman's life, like outside of Superman as Clark Kent, I love because Superman's powers are really heightened right now. That's sort of what the Action Comics 1050 is sort of like telling you before you get into this. But like Superman's powers being really heightened right now allows him to hear Lex easier. So what he starts doing is he starts tuning out the world. He starts wearing these headphones. Like, you could feel like where the world is almost, because the world is so massive, it's sort of closing in on Clark, and he is sort of overwhelmed by this. It's a small detail, but I really
I
enjoy
think
seeing
I really hope Williamson does something interesting with that in terms of like sensory overload,
that.
because like it's a concept, kind of linking to autism spectrum disorder in a lot of cases.
My brother's been reading this run actually as it's been coming out, and that was one of the first things that he called out. Is it's an autistic tic, and I was like, you're right. I hadn't actually like caught on to that when I first read it. But you can kind of see it there. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it'd be something interesting for Williamson to really explore.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, this is I should say this is the first thing that I've read by Williamson. He's
I read
not shown up at the podcast.
As someone that reads a lot of current DC, Williamson is kind of everywhere right now. He just did Dark Crisis. He had a very brief run on Batman. He's running quite a few titles at the moment.
Doesn't he have like a really acclaimed run on The Flash for like Rebirth?
Yeah. He started off in Rebirth. Yeah, the Flash run in Rebirth. He was great on that. But yeah, so he's kind of everywhere, and like I like this is your introduction to him, because it's Williamson writes a lot of like big concept stuff, but it's a very back to basics approach with this that I really appreciate.
Yeah, but also the basics don't feel like tired. Like, okay, like you have a classic design for Jimmy. Obviously, you have Clark with his heightened powers, and you have Lois as the editor-in-chief of the Daily Planet.
And every single thing she says in this just screams Dana Delaney.
It does.
Just her voice is everywhere throughout this issue, and you could really see that. Not just in the way she's written, but in her color palette, the way Jamal Campbell draws her. Very animated series Lois, I think.
Very
really,
animated
really
series,
nails it.
but also the way Campbell draws Clark and Lois just in love.
Oh, it's so nice.
These two are crazy about each other, and they
Yeah.
love each other.
Yep, the scene up on the rooftop I thought was especially effective between the two of them.
The scene
That
on
was
the rooftop, I love. Okay, I'll be interested to see what Williamson eventually does with Superman's family, because he's clearly aware of the family, and they make some small cameos in these first 3 issues.
Mhm.
But Clark grounding himself, Lois being there for him.
Yeah, it's really
it's
nice.
just great. And then, like, what's interesting is this issue has no real overarching conflict outside of that fight with Livewire early on, which is very subtle foreshadowing for how a future issue is going on now in retrospect. But we end on just this beat.
Where we get introduced to Supercorp, which is, again, we know, at least for the moment, that like Lex is trying to get to Superman somehow, and this is sort of his way of doing it. With first off, Mercy Graves is currently in charge of Supercorp while Lex is in prison, and just having Mercy Graves here as in a very important role is just really nice to see. And she's written very
And a
well.
very different characterization from the animated series, which is really how I view the character, because she's not really been in any of the like comics that we've actually covered
on the podcast.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of Supercorp. And also what's really fun about covering a current run on the channel is that we've never really had a chance to just like not know at all where a story is going. I'm not sure exactly how deep this deception runs, even if it is a deception. I mean, we know it is at least briefly here in order to elicit a reaction out of Clark. but we don't know exactly just how deep it goes. And I'll be really interested to see where that goes in future issues.
It also feels wrong for Superman to be in charge of a business.
Yeah.
And Williamson is very aware of how wrong that feels. Like,
yeah,
there's this Superman chibi mascot thing.
Yeah, that first off is just kind of adorable, but
It's
I really
adorable.
love it.
It's adorable, but it's also like, this just feels off.
Yeah.
And it perfectly keeps with Lex Luthor wanting to just fuck with Clark's head. Even more so, like, with Lex Luthor is the type of super genius to make a holographic AI version of himself, parodying Jor-El.
It's awful. And this is the thing that I was talking about, like, that he does to, like, elicit a reaction out of Clark. And it very much does, obviously. And we do angry Superman here, which is a very tricky subject, I think, portraying angry Superman. But I feel like it's done very well here, because first off, he doesn't go too far with that.
Well, he also doesn't let his anger distract from being who he is, right? Like,
yeah. What it does distract from is the fact that Mercy set this all up to get Clark to go to Lex.
Yes.
Which is the only thing he's unaware of here. But on his way to go to see Lex afterwards, he is stopped by Parasite, who's attacking a school bus full of children. And I love Parasite's design in this. Jamal Campbell, once again, I can't praise the art enough. He really nails the design here. And I love the way Williamson writes Parasite too. We'll get to this in the next two issues as we cover them. But Parasite's kind of campy, I think. He's just really fun, has some really cheesy dialogue that I really enjoy. Just some really, really fun things on display here.
And then you get that reveal of there are a bunch of parasites right at the end.
Yeah, and so he's sort of like multiplying, and we end with this great note that that Lex has been like trying to like warn of Superman apparently this whole time that Lex is not that Superman is not necessarily facing his own enemies, he's facing Lex's. So someone from the past is trying to get to Lex and using Superman, or not even using Superman, but a Superman is more a roadblock in this case in order to get to Lex. So Superman ends up defending Lex through this story, which I really like, and I'm loving the dynamic that Williamson is going for here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really, also just really it's such a good ending, and of course then we end with like an actual just like a little preview of here are the things to come.
Yeah. Looking like they're going for something Brainiac-ish, which could be really fun. I'll be really curious to see how Williamson tackles Brainiac as a character. Assuming that's Brainiac. It looks like Brainiac. I could be wrong, I suppose.
You could be wrong.
Indeed.
It could be an entirely new villain.
For once, me and you are on the same page of knowledge when it comes to the comics that we're covering. So that's.
I don't know where it's going.
I don't know where it's going either. Well, except for the next two issues, which we've already.
Yes. Yes.
All right, I guess that about does it. That was Superman #1 from 2023 by Joshua Williamson and Jamal Campbell.
Like the run is still, you can still get this. I think probably in physical fairly easily, if not.
Yeah, I think you can still get a copy for cover price. Get it if you can. If not, read it digitally. I'm sure it'll be collected fairly soon.
I think they've already put up a pre-order for like November is going to be the first volume.
Nice.
So
that'll be
which I am already tempted based on mainly these first 3 issues to also just collect a physical edition because this is it's a really damn good first issue. And what's oddly enough one thing, so if you listen to the podcast, one thing that's always sort of, I don't want to say gotten to me, is like the comic ads in like the middle of issues making some formats and trades go up. This first issue has no ads until like the very end.
Well, also because you're getting it digitally, they're not going to put those ads in the middle.
Oh well,
yeah. If you get it physically, those ads are placed everywhere.
Well, good. Yeah, good to know. Good to know. But also,
you've almost had the current comic reading experience.
Almost. But also, this first issue is kind of long. It's like 33 pages, I think.
Yes,
of actual story content. And that just those extra pages just give it time to breathe.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, go pick it up. It's fantastic. Cannot recommend it enough. We're gonna get to recording the next 2 issues now.
Yes.
Those should be up in the next couple days, honestly, at the time of releasing this. So yeah, see you guys soon.